Hello, hello. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Typically, pronouncing our name is the most difficult part of every presentation, so I'll just try to get it out of the way. Our company is called Chainalysis, and I'm Matthias Head of Policy for EU at Chainalysis. I did it again, which is a blockchain analytics company. And for the next 30 minutes, I really tried to do a proper marathon. I know it's after lunch, but I didn't manage to get it to a sprint. It will be a marathon because we are going to look at... sorry, I should introduce myself. My name is Matthias, and I've been working on crypto assets policy for more than a decade, mainly at public authorities, including ECB and the Financial Conduct Authority, but also in the public sector, including at Bitpanda. And today, really what I want to do is I want to explain roughly what blockchain analytics actually is, to tell you about advances in these fields, because AI, computational power, everything also impacts the way we can trace and prevent financial crime. We'll also look into how blockchain analytics can actually allow you to secure networks and smart contracts because of the transactional transparency you have. And we'll also briefly talk about fraud and fraud prevention using crypto assets and the transparency of crypto assets. So as I said, it's going to be a massive sprint. I know it's after lunch. Don't make me file like a SAR, a sleep activity report. If you do have any questions, let me know. I think there's also some time at the end of the presentation to do so. So let's jump right into the basics of blockchain analytics. What is blockchain analytics? We all know that blockchains are transparent, and essentially you can see wallets interacting with each other. You've got a timestamp, you've got an amount, you've got a certain type of crypto asset. But what you don't actually know is who's sitting behind those addresses. And that's where companies like Chainalysis come in, because we match wallet addresses, on-chain activity, with real-world entities. So you end up with something we call the blockchain knowledge graph. Suddenly, all these wallets make sense, and they're all connected to each other. How do we do that? In three steps. We first identify which wallets belong to certain services. And we really do this by looking through the internet, darknet, social media, whatever we can find, in order to assure with evidence that a specific wallet address belongs to a specific service. This could be Coinbase, Bitpanda, Kraken. It could be an illicit actor. It could be the darknet market. It could be any of the categories that we serve. And the most important thing here is that it's deterministic. We really have evidence for each and every attribution, we call it. So every time we map a specific wallet to a specific entity. The secret sauce that blockchain analytics brings to the table is the second step, which is clustering. We really look into the transactional behavior on blockchains and group all the addresses that we find that belong together to the same entity. So suddenly you have not just one isolated wallet, but you actually have, in some instances, even millions of wallets belonging to the same entity, really giving you more insight into what actually happens on-chain. And in the third step, this is what we will be focusing on, is we take that data and analyze it, slice it in a way that actually surfaces the information that you need. How does that look like in practice? If you look at the specific transaction, this one here, you can see the address, the balance, and the recipient, but you don't really know who's transacting and what this is all about. If you put in the same address into our systems, you suddenly discover that this is an address that belongs to Hydra Market, which is a darknet market, and it also controls more than 6 million other addresses. And then you can see how this entity interacts on-chain, really giving you contextual information to that specific address. And that's the power of blockchain analytics. Now we're doing this for more than 10 years now. We're the oldest blockchain analytics company. We've mapped more than 1 billion of those addresses to 140,000 different entities already, which is quite a lot. Now, advances in blockchain analytics. What are we actually doing here? I would actually segment blockchain analytics nowadays in 3 different buckets. The first one is what I call blockchain analytics 1.0. That's probably the stuff that everyone is familiar with. We use the transactional transparency in order to follow the flow of funds. The great thing about the transparency of blockchains is the fact that you can hop multiple transactions back when you want to look into a specific transaction. Not like in the fiat world where essentially a bank just sees the transfer to its own bank or the transaction that it sends out. In blockchains, you can hop multiple transactions back. And it really gives you incredible knowledge around the context of a specific transaction. Most people know when you know Chainalysis, our product, which is called Reactor, it allows you to investigate specific transactions, and thanks to modern use of AI, I mean, we're using machine learning for a long time because of the clustering algorithms that we use. We've got more than 400. But now, with enhanced artificial intelligence, we can even surface more information, automate even more in the tracing flow. Some of you, and I think it has been mentioned in the morning as well, there's loads of different ways to try to obfuscate transactions in transparent ledgers, including use of mixers or jumping from one blockchain to another. All these sorts of things have complicated investigations a lot. But with new technology, it is much easier to automate those. So Reactor, for example, already demixes some mixers and has more than 220 million bridge transactions included already. So you just trace through without additional effort. And then obviously there's also KYT, Know Your Transaction. It is a transaction monitoring tool with the great benefit of being able to actually look into the transaction and its indirect exposure. So not just the direct transaction that you're part of, but also in the past. When it gets really exciting is when you think about blockchain analytics 2.0. And I know I'm rushing through this because it's sort of a sprint, but then it's actually a marathon. With blockchain analytics 2.0, we are changing our perspective. We are not looking at a specific transaction. We are actually looking at a specific entity on chain and try to figure out what are all the incoming transactions to that specific entity, or what are the outgoing transactions. And that's, this is what we've done right here. So it gives you the ability to look at an entity and essentially do 24/7 due diligence, enhanced due diligence effectively, because you can see each and every transaction that comes in, goes out. It gives you the opportunity to look at an entity and assess in an instant what their counterparties are and what their exposure to, let's say, sanctions, terrorist financing, or even scams is. And you can benchmark different entities. You can even set alerts on specific thresholds if you wanted to. The same thing is that we do for entities, we now also do for really holistically across a whole asset class, a whole asset, a whole blockchain. We call it, asset intelligence. And the great thing about it is that you look at a specific asset and you can have a look at like the dynamics of that ecosystem. Who are the biggest holders? What are the types of transactions that are being made? And it really gives you an idea of the whole demographics and even the exposure of that specific asset towards certain types of categories. Again, sanctions, scams. And when you are a lister of assets, for example, and you want to know whether or not you can list a certain type of asset, a new stablecoin, a meme coin, whatever it might be, this gives you an idea of how the asset is used and how much the risk to it is. I think it's most powerful when you think about a stablecoin issuer that essentially does what Gareth said in the morning. They do now have obligations to do direct KYC with their counterparties. And this is pretty much what KYT does. So you look into transactions, all the transactions that come in, and you assess them from an AML perspective. Of course, with crypto, you've got the massive benefit of being able to do indirect exposure as well, so hops after that. But with ecosystem monitoring, the landscape suddenly looks completely different because it looks like that. You can even assess the risk and understand the risk of transactions that you are not part of, which gives you a holistic idea of how that asset is used. And when you think about stablecoin issues and they want to manage their risk around exposure to sanctions or scams, they have the ability to be aware of how the asset is used and also to take appropriate measures, which could be freezing funds, burning funds, whatever it might be. So a real game changer in that perspective. And then thirdly, this is sort of like blockchain analytics 3.0, but don't quote me on that, is enhanced artificial intelligence usage. As I said before, we already use machine learning for 10 years because that's the way you scale data. But the new capabilities have allowed us to broaden the type of data that we surface. Instead of having evidence-based data for most of the stuff that we do, we can actually look at behavioral analysis and say, well, based on that specific behavior that we observe on chain, we think it looks like someone who's selling drugs in a darknet market. Or we think this looks like wash trading. We think this looks like terrorist financing. We don't have proof for this, but the behavioral pattern looks like as if it was a transaction of that nature. We label this differently, we call it signals, but it adds like a very complex but new layer of information that we can surface here. The cool thing is, though, that we have sort of like expanded our capabilities to change the way we use our data. Because we want to get from detecting threats to preventing threats. That's what we should all be doing. We shouldn't just detect crime, we should actually prevent it. And with data solutions, here on the left-hand side, this is one of the three pillars that we are working on. We enable everyone to use our data in the way that users need it. So it's the most customizable system that can surface and alert on any type of behavior that you're interested in. It could be that you're looking for wash trading, for example, market abusive behavior. It could be that you're looking for specific types of scams. You can even look into specific smart contracts that have been used for scamming. All of this can be modified the way you need it. You can alert to whatever you think is important, depending on your business model, risk appetite, and so on. So it's sort of like untechnically spoken, a ChatGPT for blockchain analytics already. And we've done that. It's in use, and I wanted to highlight one of the things that we've done here. Operation Spincaster is very interesting because essentially what we did was each and every threat actor on chain, everyone who moves on chain leaves footprints, including fraudsters who use scamming technology. A smart contract, for example, a phishing contract that an attacker is sending to its victim in order to be able to move funds from the victim's wallet. We've found that smart contract and basically said, together with 19 law enforcement agencies, 7 crypto asset service providers, look, that contract is just stealing money from victims. We can surface each and every wallet that is infected using our tools. And that's what we did. So we looked specifically for a smart contract that has been used, and then together with law enforcement and VASPs, we contacted potential victims so that they could withdraw their funds before they were stolen, or recover them. Just 2 weeks ago, we've done a sprint with Coinbase as well, and they were looking to find all the wallets that they had connections with regards to fentanyl trading. So you can see it's really individual. And that sort of like brings me to our next stage, because transactional transparency works to detect financial flows, but it also works for cybersecurity. Each and every person that is acting, as I said before, on chain leaves fingerprints, or there is some movement that we can detect. And with Hexagate, we are expanding our territory to secure cybersecurity in Web3. Hacks are a massive topic. 2022, we had more than 2 billion in funds stolen, a figure that we surpassed already in June of this year, so it's going straight up. And of course, every hack means loss of funds immediately. And the problem is that Web3 is a technology that is permissionless, it's public, it's different to what we are used before, and most of the hacks that happened actually happened at audited protocols. And that's simply not good enough in that environment, because each and every audit is just a point-in-time assessment, and you never know what actually happens in between those audits. Crypto assets, DLT, blockchains are really dynamic, so you need to have an on-chain threat monitoring system in order to secure your protocols or your smart contracts. We just quickly walk through the anatomy of a hack. So essentially, there's 3 stages. Typically, there is some pre-attack stage. And that means, someone is funding a wallet, someone is buying scamming technology, a smart contract, for example, they want to use. Then typically, you can't really see that perfectly, but the second step is, normally what you would do as a fraudster, you try your technology. So you send your smart contract to the victim. Maybe it's a small change in the smart contract. Maybe it's just, small denomination. And you just try whether or not it works. And then thirdly, there's the execution of the hack. And then afterwards, once you have hacked and have moved funds, you're obviously trying to obfuscate those funds using mixers and bridges and whatever. Now, as I said before, the good thing about Web3 is its transparency. So if you have the right tools in place, most of the hacks that happen can be seen before they actually happen, because there are activities that prepare certain hacks. Think about, for example, someone who is buying scamming technology, and then suddenly that smart contract is trying to interact with your protocol, with your smart contract. This is something that our systems would then flag as abnormal. Think about a smart contract that suddenly changes the recipient address, which happened already. Or someone who is engaging in a smart contract, which actually does something completely different than expected. For example, changing governance structures, bringing in new signers, new admins. And that's exactly what our systems flag. How do we do that? We monitor the entire ecosystem. We look at behaviors. We even look at historic data, cross data. We even use off-chain data, mostly price data, because we also warn on DPEX and stablecoins. And then we run it through our detection engine. And essentially, the only thing that this system does, I'll make it sound easy, is looking at what a specific smart contract actually does. We even have a gate signer that essentially mimics transactions, smart contract executions, before they're executed, just to check whether or not it does what it says on the tin. If there is anything unusual, for example, recipient address is changed, a new admin is added, and these sorts of things, our systems would flag that as unusual, and then depending on what you want to do with it, either there's an automatic response, basically stopping each and every transaction, or you just halt it, or you just get notified. Most of the hacks that we hear of today, they could be prevented by these types of detection engines. Just recently, the Venus protocol was hacked. Before the hack happened, their customers of that solution, before the hack happened, exactly 18 hours before, there was a test transaction from the attackers to test the systems. We flagged those. The Venus protocol was aware, could move the funds, then identified the attacker and actually stole funds, froze funds from the attacker. So instead of stealing funds, the attackers actually lost $3 million trying to hack the Venus protocol. Yeah, so transactional transparency can also be used for cybersecurity, which I think is quite interesting, and not a lot of people know that we also do that. Now, cybersecurity is one thing, and then I'll just riddle through something very interesting because it's top of mind of everyone in the traditional financial services world, but also in the crypto world, which is scams. Scam is a massive problem, especially so-called authorized push payment fraud. So when victims are literally tricked into sending a transaction rather than their accounts being hacked. And we've got a solution there as well. We live in scamdemic, more than 1 trillion of scams in 2024. Scam is going up, and we also see this in our crypto crime report. Every year we do a crypto crime report. We basically give you a lay of the land of what happens in terms of illicit activity on chain. And the thing that we can see here is that 2024 is a pretty good year for illicit activity. It's probably a record year, 2024. But the thing that I want to point out here is two different sections. The orange one is scam activity. So funds, US dollars, with regards to scams, that's around $12 billion US. But even more importantly is the blue category down there. That's a category that we call illicit actor activity. And it's all those people, those services that either scam people, ransomware, hacks, but more importantly, that actually sell instruments to enable scams. So they sell scamming technology, they sell money laundering as a service. And as you can see, that blue bar, or part of the bar, is going up quite significantly. So there is a lot of technology being sold in order to scam people worldwide. We also see that scams on chain are getting much more technical and much more diversified. Now, Christian Wolf has said it also. AI is great for us to trace funds a bit better, but it's also great for fraudsters to circumvent the current systems that we have. Scammers are using AI chatbots to trick victims into doing whatever they want. It's easy to just copy paste websites or use deepfake systems to circumvent KYC protocols. The problem here is that most of the controls that we've implemented today are around unauthorized fraud. So people hacking computers, for example, or hacking into accounts. What happens today, though, is that people are essentially hacking humans. They are trying to trick people into sending a transaction. And the beauty of it is that no one knows at the PSP, at the bank, at the crypto service provider, Whether or not I'm sending this because I'm forced to or because I want, it just doesn't flag in any transactional monitoring system because the intent of my transaction is not clear to them. And that's the massive problem that Altiria is trying to solve. You've got this typical tools around KYC opening, transaction monitoring, but what we really want to do is, and that's what Altiria does, is we want to go to the source of the scammers and essentially ensure that we get financial information, financial infrastructure information from scammers directly in order to be able to stop transactions going to scammers before victims have to report it. So it's a proactive search for financial infrastructure information to block transactions going to fraudsters. How do we do it in a nutshell? Again, like we do with clustering, we're looking on-chain, online, various channels to ensure that we find financial identifiers, that we link to scamming activity. We also engage directly in conversations with fraudsters, so it's sort of like chatbot against chatbot type version. And we can use all that information to essentially link it to multiple channels. And the great thing is when we have information that a specific scammer is, for example, using a specific wallet address, we've got that specific wallet address, but based on that wallet address, we can use our clustering heuristics, and suddenly we've got a whole network of information around where do funds come from, where do they go, who are they interacting with, and suddenly you've got a myriad of wallets available to you that are part of a specific cluster. Now, if your customers now are trying to send funds to a scammy cluster, and it goes through our platform, we would then flag that transaction, as you can see here now, and basically say, oh, this has been part of a scam. Don't send those funds. And we also give you the evidence for it. So each and every attribution that we have, just like with the on-chain attributions, we give to you. So you know exactly where this wallet address, this bank account number, whatever it might be, has been used. And then you can stop the transaction. So it's proactively preventing funds going to attackers rather than having to wait for them to report it to you. That's roughly what we do. So this is my last slide. Really, so what I'm trying to say is that blockchain analytics has been amazing in surfacing transactional transparency relationships on chain, but we're really moving into a much more sophisticated world where we can look at behavior that is a precursor to hacking activity that we can surface in order to prevent hacks. And we can also look into fraud prevention because also here, fraudulent activity also has to be prepared. When you have got the right tools, you can surface that. And so we get into real-time prevention rather than just, detecting and trying to follow funds afterwards. I know it has been a lot. I'll rustle through. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm around. And thank you very much for your attention. Yeah.